Iran confirms its top aerospace commander general, Major General Amirali Hajizadeh, was killed in an Israeli airstrike, triggering internet curbs, flight disruptions, and raising fears of wider conflict. Investigators have recorded the black box. At least 265 people died when an Air India Boeing 787 crashed into a residential area in Ahmedabad, India, with only one survivor. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the site and Tata Group announced financial aid for victims' families. 8 Palestinian aid workers from the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation were killed in an ambush blamed on Hamas, amid reports of injuries and possible kidnappings, while an internet blackout has paralyzed aid operations across Gaza. The UN General Assembly has passed a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and urging global pressure on Israel to end its blockade and allow aid into the Strip. Iraq has accused Israel of violating its airspace during a recent strike on Iran and filed a complaint with the UN Security Council. Baghdad called a move flagrant violation of its sovereignty and urged the Council to prevent future breaches. UNAIDS chief says Trump's aid cuts are derailing the 2030 goal to end AIDS. Clinic closures and reduced access to treatments have followed, prompting urgent calls for other wealthy nations to fill the funding gap. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, wrongfully deported to El Salvador, has been brought back to the U.S. Facing migrant smuggling charges, Trump administration claimed a policy win, but critics cite due process breaches and legal challenges. The EU has extended temporary protection for Ukrainians fleeing war until March 2027. This move ensures continued access to shelter, work, and education across member states. In the latest turn of events in Israel-Iran tensions, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to speak with US President Donald Trump later today, as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, according to his office. Netanyahu's conversation with President Trump will take place before 6 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, in a letter to the President of the United Nations Security Council and the UN Secretary General, Iran's foreign minister has condemned Israel's military actions as a declaration of war. Iran also warned that Israel would deeply regret this reckless act and grave strategic miscalculation. On the ground in Israel, air raid sirens were heard across northern Israel's upper Galilee region, including cities such as Metula and Kiryat Shimona near the Lebanon border. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that they had intercepted a drone launched from Iran over the area. In Tehran, Iranian media outlet Noor News reports that 78 people have been killed and over 300 others injured in an Israeli attack on residential areas. Now we have guests joining us. Anat Bernstein-Reich, she's the president of Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Anat, for joining us today.
Good evening.
What can you tell us more about the situation and the reactions in Israel regarding this attack?
I think that in Israel we were ready for something like that to happen. I mean, the news in the past week were that such an attack is in the horizon. And when at 2:57 at night we got the siren, it didn't come as a surprise. And I think that Israel has to protect itself very clearly, in a sense that Iran, you said that Iran says that we started a war. Iran started it long back, from the fact that they are very clearly stating that they want to destroy Israel, and the purpose of their nuclear program is not for some civilian purposes, but for military activity, including developing means to use the nuclear, like the missiles that they have developed, in order to destroy Israel. So far, we were fighting mostly their proxies, whether it's Hezbollah and in the north, in Lebanon and Syria, whether it's Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, that for the past 2 months, every other day, we have a siren and a missile attack from Houthis. I'm not sure that you are aware that almost every day there are sirens here and attacks of missiles that we thankfully are able to intercept, but Houthis are actually the proxy of Iran. So Iran, all through those last 2 years since October 7, is actively working against Israel, and Israel has to protect itself. It's an existential threat. It's not just that we want to attack because of. If we allow Iran to fulfill its mission to have a nuclear weapon, it's against us, and they very clearly say so. So I think that Israel must have done this operation, and it's not over. The attack last night and through the day, I guess, will continue, hopefully until we achieve our goal. And I think that we are also making a favor to many other nations that can suffer from Iran nuclear program and hostility.
And Anat, you mentioned that Israel wants to continue this. Can Israel afford to continue high-level assassinations inside of sovereign Iranian territory without eventually provoking a bigger all-in-out war?
I think that we already provoked by getting into this attack. So we are aware that a retaliation by Iran is expected. We are ready. Our shelters are ready. The population was asked to stay at home and be ready with whatever needed for, let's say, very difficult few weeks. But we cannot afford not to act. Trump gave them 60 days to reach an agreement between US and Iran about the nuclear program. The International Agency, Atomic Energy Agency, gave their report a few days back saying that Iran are not standing to their commitment. So what is expected from Israel? To sit still? We sat still with Hamas in Gaza and see what happened in October 7 in the attack and massacre that happened to us in south of Israel. So we learned our lesson. We cannot sit still and wait for others to do our tough job. Unfortunately, we have to do it ourselves, and that's what Israel did in the attack last night.
And is Israel fully prepared for the comeback from Iran, knowing that there's non-stop or sirens often going on in Israel, and also attack from Houthi as well?
So luckily, the missiles from the Houthis were mostly intercepted there, and that's not my worry. We're worried about the missiles coming from Iran, because it's not just one missile coming. In the past 2 events, we had 2 major attacks from Iran already. We saw their capabilities. Maybe they will increase it. But in April and in October, April 24 and October 24, there were 2 attacks, massive attacks from Iran that we managed to successfully intercept, creating a coalition with our neighbors, with countries that came and assisted us. And I'm sure this coalition of countries will also be able to work against the upcoming attack from Iran.
And Anand, I want to also shed a light on Benjamin Netanyahu's support or growing opposition within the Israel, as well as as it was seen in UN, there were some countries against it as well. How do you see what's going on and the support towards the current Prime Minister of Israel?
So if you follow global leaders, and I'm talking about mainly Germany, US, France, they understand that Israel has no choice, and they support Israel attack of Iran nuclear program, because this nuclear program will work not just against Israel, it will work against other nations, and we have to unite to work against this terror supporting country. I'm sure that Indian audience would understand that the way you attacked in Pakistan, the Sindoor operation, you had no choice. Same with Israel. When a country wants to destroy us, we cannot sit still. And I think that the world leaders understand it and support us.
Thank you, Anat, for bringing that insight. You will stay with us as we have a breaking news. The International Atomic Energy Agency will convene an extraordinary board meeting on Monday. Diplomats confirmed following Israel's strikes on Iran. This comes as air raid sirens sounded across northern Israel's Upper Galilee region, including Metula and Kiryat Shimona, after the Israeli Defense Forces intercepted a drone launched from Iran. Now we go back to our discussion with Anat Berstein-Reich. She's the president of Israel Asia Chamber of Commerce. She's joining us live from Tel Aviv. Anat, is Israel, going back, how might this upcoming UN's talk affect Israel's development or impact in international community, also affect normalization with the Arab countries such as Saudi Arabia and UAE?
So let's first talk about the nuclear agency that will convene soon. And they came to the realization that Iran doesn't stand to their commitment. They accelerated their enrichment program in the past 2 months. They have didn't conclude an understanding with US and Trump that really wanted to pursue diplomatic understanding before a real action. So I am quite confident that this committee will not come up with any important decision or anything against Israel. When you're talking about our relations with Saudi and other Gulf countries, relations that we definitely want to pursue, and we want to enhance the Abraham Accords. I think that Saudi support us when it has to do with Iran. Saudi suffered from Iran in the past. Saudi collaborated with us during the previous attacks from Iran. So yes, we don't have diplomatic relations yet, but we surely have strategic collaboration. And I think that the US close relations and the recent visit of Mr. Trump to the region in the last 1 month supports the collaboration between us and these friendly countries in the region.
Thank you very much, Anat Berstein-Reich, for joining us today and sharing your expertise on Israel and Iran. Tensions between President Donald Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom are deepening as protests against ICE spread nationwide in U.S. The Federal Appeals Court has temporarily halted a ruling that would have returned control of the California National Guard to Newsom, allowing Trump to keep the troops under federal command, at least for now. The move follows a decision by Judge Charles Breyer, who ruled that Trump's deployment of troops to Los Angeles was unlawful and inflaming tensions. Trump has sent 4,000 National Guardsmen and 700 Marines into the city to protect federal buildings and ICE operations. On the other hand, the rift between Democrats and Republicans deepened. Video released by the office of U.S. Senator Alex Padilla shows the California Democrat being forcibly removed from a room by law enforcement officers at a federal building in Los Angeles after he tried to ask a question to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem about immigration raids that have sparked protests. Let's listen in.
On the ground. On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go and stand behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
This is what the U.S. Senator stated later.
Sir, this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question? If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
Now we have guests joining us, Scott Faulkner. He's a head Eagle Enterprises, a security firm based in Washington, joining us live from Washington, U.S. Thank you, for joining us, Faulkner, for joining us today, and welcome to NewsX World. From a security operations perspective, is tripling ICE's daily arrest quota to 3,000 logistically viable without compromising procedural integrity or public safety?
Well, the key is that every one of the anywhere from 12 to 20 million illegal aliens that have come into the country during the Biden administration compromised all sorts of processes and policies and our national security, and the courts were completely silent during that period. So them trying to step in and doing things now is pretty disingenuous. But there's no, again, to meet some of the goals that the Homeland Security Department is trying to achieve in terms of getting rid of the illegals in our country, starting with the worst of the worst and then moving on to the broader population. They have to keep up that kind of pace. And it's not going, I mean, we have suffered as a country over the last 4 years. We need to end that suffering by removing as many people as fast as possible.
And according to what risks do large-scale public-facing raids pose to officer safety, especially in urban environments like LA or New York, where resistance is quite high?
Well, that's always going to be an issue. I mean, again, we're dealing with these sanctuary communities and sanctuary states that are all unconstitutional. I mean, the U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court and other courts consistently for over 200 years have said that any form of sanctuary or any other form of ignoring or reversing federal law is basically nullification, which is illegal. So we need to be able to assert federal authority because that's the only way we're going to keep our country safe. In terms of the actual safety issues, clearly it is safer if in a cooperating city and a cooperating state to remove these individuals when they're still in prison as opposed to getting back on the street. And so there's a lot of issues here. I think that part of it is also that we're dealing with a highly organized insurrection. I mean, we've already arrested the person who was handing out materials at the Los Angeles riots that you don't just simply go down the street and buy. So this stuff was pre-positioned, pre-ordered, the whole supply chain to create insurrection has been there for possibly weeks, if not months. They were just waiting for the right event to trigger. So yes,
And
ICE agents and others are definitely in harm's way. We're hoping that they will do what they need to do to not be in harm's way.
And what is your take on the deployment of the Marines to support ICE raids? Where do you draw the line between necessary force and overreach?
The Marines are basically being used along with the federalizing of the National Guard to actually protect federal assets. If you look at the Marines that have already been deployed in Los Angeles, they're basically protecting federal office buildings and other federal facilities. So it's staying within that. They're not being, they are not being used in a law enforcement environment. They're being used in a protective circle around federal assets, and that's totally legitimate. Again, you go back to the 1807 Insurrection Act in America, which has been upheld numerous times in the court, which says that a president, in terms of insurrection, may federalize National Guard units in the state level and bring in federal military forces, and that we're clearly dealing with an insurrection.
And now we're seeing this rise of ICE. Could this create long-term complications for military readiness or public trust in uniformed institutions?
Right now, the surveys are still showing consistently over 60% of Americans are in favor of what the president is doing. He ran on this, he got elected on this, he's now implementing his promises, and the American public, again, when you listen to most of the American media, which is very left-wing, very anti-Trump, very pro-illegal immigration, you think that it's quite the opposite. But when you look at the real polling, which even is done by some of these media organizations, you have overwhelming support from the American public that they're tired of having public services stretched by illegals. They're tired of having all this new illegal activity, deaths, drug dealing, smash and grab, stealing, and all the rest happening by these illegals. People want it to end, and Trump is ending it.
Thank you very much, Scott Faulkner, for joining us today and sharing your expertise as a Head Eagle Enterprises of security firm based in Washington. Now we move on to our next story. Ukraine said Friday it had received 1,200 unidentified bodies from Russia following Istanbul peace talks. Russia claims the remains belong to Ukrainian citizens, including soldiers. The two nations also freed over 1,000 wounded or young prisoners of war under a large-scale exchange deal. Ukraine published images of its troops visibly injured but smiling, wrapped in national flags. Meanwhile, Russia said its forces captured the village of Yablunivka in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, 9 kilometers from the Russian border. Moscow says it aims to create a buffer zone. 2 more villages in Donetsk were also seized as Russia escalates battlefield gains and drone strikes. Ukrainian President Zelensky plans to urge U.S. President Donald Trump at the G7 summit to impose tougher sanctions on Moscow. Let's listen in to what President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky had to say.
Я розраховую, що у нас буде порозмова на саміті G7. І дуже розраховую, що якщо до цього не будуть прийняті відповідні рішення, що мені вдасться мати принаймні порозуміння, наскільки ми близькі до цього рішення. Важливо, що йде координація з країнами Європейського Союзу і узгодження позицій, схожих позицій щодо пакетів санкцій. Я вважаю, що це вже крок вперед.
Trump blamed both sides for stalling peace and criticized Ukraine for not compromising. Zelensky stressed U.S. sanctions remain key and said final decisions lie in the White House. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is pushing a bill for 500% tariffs on Russian oil buyers, mainly targeting India and China. German Defense Minister Pistorius visiting Kyiv ruled out sending Taurus missiles but pledged 1.9 billion euros in military aid. Here's what Boris Pistorius, German Defense Minister, had to say.
Entstehen kann. Das ist das Ziel unserer gemeinsamen Kooperation. Wir sind da einen guten Schritt vorangekommen. Wir werden nachher eine entsprechende Vereinbarung unterschreiben, die das noch einmal absichert. Ich kann für Deutschland sagen, dass wir in dieses Jahr hineingegangen sind mit einer Unterstützung für die Ukraine in der Größenordnung von 4 Milliarden Euro. Wir haben das im Laufe der letzten Monate auf 7 Milliarden Euro aufgestockt und haben jetzt in der Planung, das ist noch nicht endgültig beschlossen, steht aber in Aussicht, einen weiteren Betrag von 1,9 Milliarden Euro, die dann in den nächsten Wochen und Monaten, wenn der Beschluss im Parlament gefasst ist, zur Verfügung stehen und aus denen unter anderem ein Teil genommen wird zur Finanzierung des Projekts Long Range Fires. Das heißt, Deutschland wird in diesem Jahr rund 9 Milliarden Euro für die Unterstützung der Ukraine zur Verfügung stellen.
Kyiv insists diplomacy won't work without pressure, warning of rising Russian attacks. Drone strikes killed civilians on both sides, including a child in Russia's Belgorod region. Moscow accused Ukraine of resisting daily POW exchanges despite agreed terms. More swaps are expected soon. Now we have guest Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister, joining us live from Latvia. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Is the U.S. losing its moral leverage by calling for compromise while Russia expands its battlefield gains?
Well, I think you can fairly say that it's lost its respect in Ukraine, because Ukraine has already offered to compromise and has accepted almost everything that the Americans suggested that they should do. But they do ask the one thing, which is that there should be a ceasefire first before anything further happens, whereas Russians don't want a ceasefire at all. It's very difficult because Trump is clearly anti-Ukraine. I mean, 4 times now he said that he's given Putin 2 weeks, and 4 times he's done nothing. I do not see that Trump will put any sanctions on Russia. If he does, if he's forced to, maybe by the international community, to do something, I think that they will be extremely weak sanctions and won't actually do anything. So America is actually losing credibility in this, in terms of Ukraine, because, I can stop the war in 24 hours, and here we are a long way beyond that, and actually America has done nothing to stop anything except bully Zelensky.
And now looking at the wider lens, what's the real objective behind Russia's buffer zone strategy in regions like Sumy? Is it defense or future annexation?
No, it's just continuing moving forward. There's no buffer strategy. In fact, I'm not even sure who came up with that idea in the first place. But Russia is now inside artillery range of Sumy and is now actually using field artillery to bombard Sumy. And that was their first aim, is to get close enough. I mean, the Russian tactic is very simple. It's destroy and move forward, destroy and move forward. So they will attempt to destroy as much as Sumy as possible, removing civilians from it, so they have to flee, which a lot of them are already. And then they will just keep moving forward, take and destroy Sumy in the same way that they've taken and destroyed other towns like Bakhmut.
Thank you very much, Glenn Grant, for joining us and sharing your expertise as an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.